Chairman, thank you very much. This is very impressive, and I must say, so far on the campaign trail, you have the best donuts. Those are great. Those are great. Take a box home for the plane. So you saw my friends outside, right? Yeah. My favorite protest, because they go everywhere we go now, right? We put out a public schedule wherever we go, so they gear up, and I guess they get in a little caravan and go on 90 and go wherever we're going. And what they didn't have today, I'm really upset. I was going to actually write it myself to give to one of them. Is those who hose natural gas exploration? Don't be a fracking gas hole. That's what they call it. That's pretty good, actually. You have to admit, we got to give them a couple points. So I'm glad it's nice weather for them. If it was bad, we'd send some hot chocolate. Anyway, it is really good to be here. I really mean that. We took off at 7:30 at Westchester County Airport. Just got off the plane, literally, and the chairman picked us up. We're here, and then I got to be back in the Bronx early this afternoon for a huge. And by the way, I'm really glad to hear what you just said about the Hispanic coalition here, because that is extraordinarily important. And where I'm going in the Bronx, there will be about 1,000 Hispanics, mainly ministers. And yo hablo español, y este es muy importante. Esta región, este estado, and it's going to be really important for our outreach. And I'm proud to say that in Westchester, where it's very similar to Erie, we have almost 1 million people, and 220,000 call themselves with Hispanic heritage. So it is a growing population. It's an important segment of our population. But Westchester, like Erie, is very diverse, and I think that's a great thing. The diversity is what makes us a unique and wonderful state, and it is certainly something that we as a party need to be perceived and in reality do better. And I'll talk about that in a second. But first of all, my message as I go around the state, it's a real simple question that I ask anybody, not just Republicans, anybody. And it's a question that's not rhetorical, because it really does need to be answered. Because how you answer this question is how you're going to vote in November. So my question is very simple. As a state, under Governor Cuomo, are we winning or are we losing? Because like that stadium in Orchard Park in the fall, when 4 o'clock comes or 7 o'clock comes, the Bills either won or they lost. And if they lost, you go home and you're not happy. And the team then practices for the following week to do better, because it only matters if you're winning or losing. So you're either getting ahead, like in life, or you're falling back. So as a state, are we winning or are we losing? Now, Andrew Cuomo would love to make you think that we're winning. So that's why these Startup New York ads are on every channel, every minute, and they haven't produced a job. And he spent tens of millions of our dollars promoting himself within New York to try to get 49 other states to send their businesses here. So it's not working, and people understand that. So why do I say that this state is losing? Well, I think objectively speaking, no matter how you look at it, this state is losing. We are dead last 50th in all the wrong categories. We're losing more people than any other state in America. 400,000 New Yorkers have thrown in the towel. 400,000 New Yorkers in the last 4 years. Packed the moving vans and they've left. And you know it. You see it. And it's not unique to Western New York. It's everywhere. We're the highest tax state in America, and it's not even close. We're 40% above the national average. And what are we getting for that, by the way? We spend more per child for education in this state than any other state, and we're 32nd in results. We're in the bottom half. We have third world roads. Everything's collapsing around us. And yet, we can hardly pay the tax bills. I mean, if you're like me, my wife and I have 3 kids, a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And just like most people in the middle class, we're, it's almost paycheck to paycheck. We're struggling just to make sure that we can move ahead. We would want nothing more than to keep living in Westchester where we were born and raised, and give our kids an opportunity that we had and put them to college. If I only knew, instead of putting away a couple $100s per month in our 529 account for our kids, if I only knew the governor's new plan to give free, tuition for those behind bars, I would have taught my kid how to rob a bank. I think it'd be a lot cheaper. So it would save me a lot of money. But anyway, so we're either losing or we're winning as a state. We're losing the most people. We have the highest taxes. We have the most corruption, and it's not even close. It's disgusting. It's actually disgusting what's happening under the democratic culture of corruption in Albany. We have the highest electricity rates. I mean, I go on and on and on. So all the wrong categories, we are dead last 50. And this governor's been given a chance, and I rooted for him really strongly. And quite frankly, I thought he had a good first year. And then he went off the reservation. And he did not do what we needed to be done. The radical reform that he knew we needed and he promised, he gave up. So, we're dead last, but we can do better. We can do a lot better. So what does losing look like? It's one thing to say we're losing as a state, but what does losing actually look like? Losing looks like when, who goes to Walmart or Target?
Sure.
Who's working now? You ever see who's working behind the counters? It's senior citizens. Senior citizens who retired 10 years ago. They're back at work because they need some income to be able to stay in their home, to pay taxes. They're wearing those thick-soled shoes because their feet hurt. That's what losing looks like. It also looks like when you have, that iPhone. You're trying to figure out how to FaceTime your kids, just so you can see what they look like because they're in Florida, they're in Texas. Losing looks like a little child who's holding on to his or her doll as they're getting in the car to leave New York to go somewhere else. They're never going to see their friends again. That's what losing looks like. And that's what we're dealing with now on a real basis. Those in Alabama, they used to say, thank God for Mississippi. Because in every category, Mississippi was always just below Alabama, so they could always make fun of Alabama. Now, 49 other states are saying, thank God for New York. That is embarrassing. Now, I am a tried and true, born and raised in New York. I am a New Yorker, and you are too. This was the state that built the Erie Canal, that fed the whole Northeast, that built the Empire State Building in a year and 45 days. This was the state that would never settle for second place. I mean, you give us a challenge, we would win. And now we're dead last 50th? It is embarrassing. And that state I want back. We can make this state great again. All right, so how many Italians in here? All right, so you may have heard this once growing up. There's an old joke, why are so many Italians named Tony? Because when they were leaving Italy, they would stamp on their suitcases, to NY, to NY.
Never heard that one before.
You know what's happening now? Now, it's being stamped on their suitcases, to SC, to NC, to FL, to TX, to ND, ND. Not Notre Dame. North Dakota. Now, I know you like cold weather up here, but it's like 50 below every day in Fargo. And yet, New Yorkers are fleeing. They're fleeing all over the place, including to North Dakota. Why? Because God blessed North Dakota with oil or energy under their feet. If only He would have done that here in New York. So we're sitting on the biggest natural gas shale in the country. Marcellus and Utica might even be bigger. And yet, despite them protesting, we should be not using the F word, fracking no good. We say clean natural gas exploration. This is something that 30 other states are doing, including many Democratic governors. The President of the United States, in his State of the Union, said that we should be drilling for natural gas. This kind of energy production would create a boom around the state, not just in the southern tier, not just in central New York, but in western New York, everywhere. It would bring billions of dollars in new revenue to this state, which, God forbid, we could actually use to cut taxes or put into education. It would lower our energy costs. It's become a national security issue, by the way, just see Ukraine. And it would put tens of thousands of people back to work. All different skill levels, all different degrees, or no degree at all. But this is an opportunity that we have wasted, and that Andrew Cuomo refuses to do simply because he is held hostage by the far left, including Bobby Kennedy Jr. So he has said no to New York and yes to some of his far left supporters. Day one, we start bringing in the energy companies and we start putting people back to work in an Astorino administration.
Right. So
we can do a lot better than what's happening right now. And here's how we won in Westchester. Westchester, because I'm hearing the same thing. Why would you want to run? You can't win. You're a Republican, right? This is a Democratic state. You know that, right? Well, I heard the same thing. In 2009, I heard the same thing. Westchester is 49% Democrat, 24% Republican. It's the home of the Clintons. Home of the Hollywood elite. It's tough terrain. And yet, Westchester was going deep off the rails. It's the highest tax county in America. They were spending like crazy, taxing like crazy. Businesses were fleeing to Connecticut or anywhere. People were leaving. And I said, look, we're going to treat people like adults. We're going to say what the problem is, how we're going to make it better, and we're going to give a real alternative. We're not going to be Republican-like. We're not going to be Democrat-like. We're going to be Republicans. We're going to stick to our principles, and we're going to explain why we can do better. And so I ran, despite having a 30-point deficit to start the race, despite being outspent, despite the machine against us, but the timing was right. The message was right. We raised enough money to get that message out. We had people working really hard, and on election night, we shocked the world. We didn't squeak by, which, quite frankly, we were just hoping to do. We won by 15 points in deep blue Westchester. Just like what happened here with the Erie County Legislature. This is amazing what's happening. People are waking up. Less party ideology and let's have some common sense. And that's what we can do in this race. Very similar. And what most people in my neck of the woods don't understand is that New York City isn't determining this race. You look back over the last 5 governor races, going back to Pataki in '94, and John Cahill, who was part of that team, part of that administration, if he so chooses to run for Attorney General, let me tell you, you can't ask for anybody better. I've known John a long time. He is an amazing human being, and he will be an amazing Attorney General. So if he throws his hat in the ring, not only does he have my support, but I hope he has all of your support. He will be a wonderful addition to the ticket. So what happened? We won. How can we win this year? First of all, the political wins are with Republicans this year. We get to run against 3 people. Cuomo, Obama, and the gift of all gifts, de Blasio. The political winds are with us. People are frustrated. They're almost feeling like there's no hope anymore, and there is. And we can win by doing what we did in Westchester. Not just talking to Republicans. We're going to talk to everybody. And it's why on March 5th, we announced, March 6th, we started announcing in public, and we started in the Bronx. And why in the Bronx? It's like 10-1 Democrat. Why? Because I'm not going to leave any neighborhood neglected. I'm not going to leave any vote on the table. I am going to ask everybody for their support. And the best advice that I didn't take from a consultant once was, don't go there, they won't vote for you. There and they could be any non-traditional Republican area. And my response was, well, why would they vote for me? I haven't even introduced myself. And that's what we need to do everywhere. So we worked hard in each campaign, going to neighborhoods where Republicans don't normally go or don't normally get votes. And we built a coalition. And so when the final votes came in this past year, in 2-to-1 Democrat, we won 30% of the Democratic vote. We won a majority of the Hispanic vote. We won 25% of the African American vote. And that's the way we will win this year, by telling our message to everybody, everywhere. And that's how we're going to win. So, as Governor Walker said in Wisconsin, what people respect is you standing on your principle, by leading and keeping your promises. That's what the vast majority of voters respect. So I'm here to tell you, I'm here to look at each one of you in the eye and say that yes, a conservative Republican can still win in New York, and we're going to do it. So I need your help. Be part of us. Be part of Facebook and Twitter, and be on our website and chip in anything you can, whether it's $25 or the maximum is $41,000 if anyone wants to register. But we will win by going door to door in every neighborhood and asking everybody for their support. So with that, I'll take a question or two before I grab some donuts and yeah.
One thing you didn't mention in all of that, as my friend Tony here is videotaping this, is the SAFE Act. There are between 6 and 8 million gun owners in this state, and I think you really need to hit that home, because if you get them to vote for you, you win.
Tony, zoom in. Let me tell you something, Tony. Tony, you from Italy originally?
Yes, sir. And that's not changing to from New York either.
Okay. Stay in New York, Tony. I was at the rally on April 1st in Albany, where there were about 5,000 people, where I spoke. I have said very loudly that the Unsafe Act should be repealed, and we will do that once we get into office. Here's a perfect example of how Andrew Cuomo and I handled this incident and this disaster at Newtown, Connecticut. Andrew Cuomo rushes out to get a headline. And so what he did in the process was he put a law together that was found partially unconstitutional by a federal judge. He put every police officer in violation. You still have part of the law that's not implemented. It had to be amended several times. And he made law-abiding citizens into lawbreakers. That is the exact wrong way to do something. What we did in Westchester, and let me tell you about that day, and I'm sure all of you probably remember, but Newtown, Connecticut borders, it's very close to the Westchester border. It's very close to Danbury, Connecticut. So we all knew somebody over there. And the day it happened, I was driving around and I heard it on the radio, got back to my office, put on the TV, and just slumped in my chair. You know, I don't know how you cannot be affected when you see any massacre like this, but when there's children involved, and when you have children. I mean, we canceled everything for the weekend. I went home. I hugged my kids till I couldn't hug them anymore. And then my wife and I decided, look, we got to talk to the kids because we can't shield them from this. They're going to hear about it. So at dinner, we started talking to them about what had happened. And my 10-year-old, who I guess at the time was 9, said to me, Daddy, what do I do if a shooter comes into my school? He said, I think I would try to escape. And my 8-year-old daughter at the time said to me, I would try to play dead or hide. He said, Daddy, which is right? Now, I can't answer that question. I had no idea what was right. So I was thinking on the weekend there, is there anything I could or should be doing as county executive, and certainly as a parent, is there anything I can do? So here's what we did. Over the next couple of months, we took our time and we studied the issue. We put all of law enforcement and all of the educators in Westchester, public-private parochial schools, were all represented, including federal, state, local police, at SUNY Purchase, and we had Bill Bratton, who is now the Commissioner of NYPD, speak. And we discussed about protocols and how to make schools and campuses safer, how to make children safer, what to do if something like this actually happened. The second thing, which was even more important, was the uncomfortable discussion a couple months later, where we then had we had law enforcement, educators, but then we had the mental health community, we had the religious community, the nonprofits, and we discussed the mental health breakdown of society and in Westchester and what we can do about it to actually make a difference. We had the director of violence for the Centers for Disease Control from Atlanta come up and said, you do treat violence as a disease. And so 2 things came out of this. One is absenteeism. When a child is not in school for whatever reason, it could be legitimate, it could be abuse in the home, it could be bullying, it could be drug abuse, it could be just doesn't want to go to school. And that child is not in school chronically. The likelihood of that child succeeding in life drops tremendously. In fact, they will end up in trouble somehow. So you got to identify that, deal with it, get them back in the classroom. The second thing, which to me was amazing, 13 to 18-year-olds, 20% of our 13 to 18-year-old will at some point in their childhood have a debilitating mental health issue. So if my child or your child falls down, scrapes his knee, you know what to do. You go to the first aid kit, you put a bandage on it. It's really bad, you take him to the hospital. But if there's a child that's withdrawn, that talks about suicide or violence, a lot of people, adults, teachers, we don't know what to do. We kind of look the other way, or we might say something, but... So we did a mental health first aid kit. And this is what we're training all of our teachers, our responders, parents. So when this child, who unfortunately grows up to do what was done in Newtown, maybe those could be prevented by dealing with the mental health aspect, which, by the way, the governor has cut back tremendously in the state budgets. That's the issue. That's the difference between how we handled something and how Andrew Cuomo handled something. Yes, sir.
I've been involved in Common Core concerns.
Common Core.
2010.
Yep.
And I'd like to, if possible, be part of a local effort to educate people about Common Core on your behalf. One thing I noticed, it should, among concerned parents at least, the names David Coleman and Sandra Stotsky should be household names by now, but they're not.
Yep. Common Core. Let me explain Common Core.
I'd like to be part of a local effort.
Mike Cuomo has a hard time sleeping.